No one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon?
It was one of those rare moments in American history where all the usual political chaos just seemed to stop for a few seconds, and everybody watching got to see what real composure actually looks like. The whole thing happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is normally just a night of jokes, light teasing, and polite laughs, but this time the energy in the room felt completely different, almost like people were waiting for a heavyweight fight to start. 4 months before that night, Donald Trump had been everywhere in the headlines, constantly going after President Barack Obama and pushing questions about his birth certificate, so by the time they were both in that room together, you could feel the tension hanging over the entire event.
There was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership, and so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up.
He didn't just criticize Obama's policies either, he made it personal. He openly mocked his education and kept presenting himself as the tougher, more capable guy, and the media ate it up because every controversial comment turned into another viral moment. By the time both men finally ended up sitting in the same room, only a few feet apart, the entire world was locked in watching, expecting some kind of clash, a burst of ego, maybe even real anger. Trump sat there stiff, arms folded, looking completely ready for a fight. After weeks of dominating attention just by being louder than everyone else, people assumed Obama would either fire back the same way or get dragged into that same aggressive energy. But instead, Barack Obama did the exact opposite. He walked up to the podium completely calm, adjusted the microphone with this quiet confidence, and in that moment you could already tell he was fully in control of the room.
What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
He slowly looked across the room until his eyes landed on Donald Trump, and suddenly the whole place went almost completely quiet, except for the faint sound of silverware in the background. And instead of standing there arguing point by point or trying to defend himself with facts and documents, Obama did something way more effective. In this calm, controlled voice, he said, "No one is happier to finally put this birth certificate issue behind us than Donald," and then paused just long enough before adding that now Trump could finally get back to focusing on the really important questions, like whether the moon landing was fake, what happened in Roswell, and where Biggie and Tupac are. The room exploded with laughter because in one moment he completely exposed how ridiculous the whole thing sounded. But he still wasn't done. The energy shifted, his tone became more serious, and as he looked directly at Trump, he delivered the line that really defined the night. Calmly, without raising his voice at all, he said that real leadership isn't about noise or insults, it's about responsibility, results, and respect for the people you serve.
I think it's restricted, by the way, to Mr. Trump. I mean, I find it interesting that everybody's focused on Trump primarily just because he says in more interesting ways what the other candidates are saying as well.
In that moment, the whole energy of the room completely shifted. The laughter slowly faded and turned into this thoughtful silence where people were just sitting there taking in what they had witnessed. The contrast between the two men suddenly felt impossible to ignore. One built his presence around spectacle, volume, and dominance, while the other showed calm, controlled authority without even trying too hard. Obama let his words hang in the air for a few seconds, almost forcing the audience to realize how small and unserious the attacks really were. And by refusing to sink to the same level, he exposed the difference between pure showmanship and actual leadership. Then he hit the room with another sharp joke, bringing up Trump's decisions on The Apprentice and joking that firing Gary Busey might not exactly be the kind of judgment people want from a president. The crowd burst into laughter again, but honestly, it was that earlier message about respect, responsibility, and leadership that stayed with people long after the jokes ended. Clips from that night spread everywhere, not just because it was a clever comeback, but because it reminded people what leadership can actually sound like when words carry weight beyond just being loud. A lot of observers later pointed out how strategically powerful that moment really was.
You gotta win. You know, I've watched a lot of people, leaders, great leaders. And you know, the one thing about sports is you break it down into, a 2-hour period, something nice. You don't have to wait a lifetime to find out is somebody a winner or a loser. You got a lot of losers.
By staying completely composed, Obama basically refused to give Trump the reaction everyone expected, and in doing that, he strengthened his own image as presidential even more. Trump's comments came across loud and emotional, while Obama's restraint made the contrast between them impossible to miss. It was one of those moments that showed how, in a world full of non-stop noise and chaos, calmness can actually be more powerful than aggression. He cut straight through all the drama simply by refusing to add to it, and that composure ended up becoming the defining image of the entire night. At that point, the exchange stopped being about insults and turned into something bigger, a lesson in how leaders respond when they're under pressure. Because real strength doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes it shows itself through patience, clarity, and control. And honestly, that's why the moment connected with so many people beyond politics. It touched on something deeper about discipline and respect. Obama showed that staying calm under pressure isn't weakness at all, it's strength. Calm isn't surrender, it's command. By choosing restraint instead of reacting emotionally, he controlled the narrative and pushed his opponent into a reactive position instead. And in the end, that single moment accomplished what endless arguments never could, leaving behind a lasting reminder that true authority belongs to the people who stay steady when everything around them isn't.